Good evening, folks, and welcome to our end of the year stream for Pilot Review and our wrap party. I am Captain Blade J52, and I am joined this week by some of my merry cohorts. We have our resident Wolf of the Timber Clan.
How's it going, guys?
And we also have our resident RP hologram, fresh off of a mobile emitter recharge, Artie.
Hey guys.
And also joining us again, now that he's got a little bit more time with his job and everything, we have our resident Creo with us this evening.
Coming to you live from New Year's Eve, it's Creo! And it's also not New Year's Eve yet.
Well, I mean, I could arrange that by the time this goes up, but you know.
Semantics.
Yep. We don't usually, we don't usually get to these segments until a bit later in the show. Our RP Corner and our budget build. There's not really been a lot of articles that's been going up this week, aside from a few random sales here or there, but nothing of significance. I believe most of the Cryptic staff are on vacation, at least until after the New Year's. Probably be getting a few more blogs and stuff after that. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive into what we do have here in our Club 47 venue, which I think is kind of appropriate for an end-of-the-year wrap party. But let's go ahead and we're going to dive into our budget build and go from there. Alright, so most of you by now are probably getting pretty close to actually getting this ship, and what we actually have is our Fakiri Sator warship. Try saying that 10 times fast.
I will never say anything other than Feklar. I don't buy it into the Fakiri, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Creo on that one. Feklar was actually stated in the show. That would be a canon answer, and that's been a minor contention of irritation for me.
I just think if they spell it with
Just saying, it's canon info.
You know what's worse, though, is... You know what's worse is the Dosi. They're not Dosi, they're Dozai.
Fair enough. Oh, Lord. Yeah, it's going to be a fun stream. But
It is.
What would you do without us, Blade?
probably have a lot more sanity.
But you don't want that.
Of course, it would also be boring around here, so I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah, you monologuing?
Yeah, that's a good point. I doubt they want to hear redneck the whole time. But anyway, so getting into our ship and everything, a lot of you have probably gotten the ship by now, or getting close to getting your warship. And once you've got the ship, for a lot of you, this may be the first Tier 6 ship that you have, or at least for a while. And for some of you, this may be just another thing you're adding to your collection to get it. But for those of you that actually do want to maybe test something out, you don't really want to stick a lot of resources into it, or maybe you don't really have a lot of resources to begin with, but you still want to take the ship out for a spin, so what can you do as far as a budget build? And you can actually do quite a bit more than what you would think. So, for this particular ship, it's a 4-4 layout, and on the forward end of the ship, we have one of our Crit D times 2 phaser beams. This is from the Everything Old is New mission. They finally got those phaser beams reinstated. Then we also have from our Tier 6 reputation our Terran Task Force phaser beam, because enough time has gone by now that most people should have Tier 6 reps on at least one tune. Then we also have our Quantum Phase torpedo and our Quantum Phase beam up front. In the rear of the ship, we have two more of our Crit D times 2 phasers. We also have our heavy phaser turret. And then we also have our Trilithium Omni. And then there's some set bonuses that are going to get called into play. We'll talk about those in just a minute. Now for our shields, our engines, our deflector, and our warp core, we kind of pieced a few things together from this to take advantage of some of the bonuses we can get on the budget level. Now for our shields and our deflector, we actually used the Bajor defense set. In a nutshell, this set bonus is going to give us a Category 1 boost to our phasers. That's going to be very beneficial in this case. Then for our impulse engines, we're actually using the prevailing innervated engines, or the competitive engines that are going to give it the tactical cooldown reduction. So these engines are going to let you cheese a bit of extra cooldown out of your abilities, let you use them a lot more often. Then for a warp core, one that is very hard to beat on the budget end, and why we feature it quite frequently, is our Temporal Phase Overcharged core, which essentially gives you a Temporal Negotiator style effect in the form of its capacitor by cutting your cooldowns in half for the duration it's active. Then
cutting your cooldowns in half, that sounds like cheating, man.
What's cheese? It's definitely cheese, I'll give it that.
It's not cheating, it's winning with style.
But Blade is right. It's pretty much a go-to core at the budget level.
Yep.
Most cores come close to being as good as what it can offer. But in my opinion, and I think Blades as well, he can refute me on that one, this one edges out all the others.
Yep.
So how does one get that core? I've not heard of it, I don't think. Or maybe I have.
This is actually a core that a lot of people passed over originally. And that is the one from the Butterfly mission in the Iconian War Arc.
Aha.
Then, this is actually the one where you get the Temporal Disentanglement Suite as well. So you run that maybe one more time, you can get the core with it too.
Yes, I'll have a large warp core with my Temporal Disentanglement Suite meal platter, thank you.
Well, the best thing about this core, and
You
I
want
know we're
some warp
running...
plasma with that?
Oh, yes, and I definitely am going to want a side of nacelle.
Oh, God. Best thing about this is if you're a Tetrion user, you're trying to get some budget Tetrion gear, the 2-piece set bonus from this Butterfly set is Tetrion damage. So I know we're running phasers here, but if you ever run Tetrions, this is just going to add further to what you're trying to do starting off with that kind of energy type.
Sir, I don't run Tetrions or phasers. I use Anti-Proton because they have the best sound in the game.
Sorry, anti-proton beam broke.
Oh, jeez. But anyways, moving right along for our device slots, we actually have 3 for the ship, which is actually more than what I was expecting this one to have. But we like to think of devices as personal preference because for the most part they are. However, a couple of good devices we will recommend for you guys. One is the Subspace Field Modulator that comes out of the Skirmish mission. You can access that now through the Mission Journal in the Available tab. This is one of the ones that kind of got sidelined, but the device is still very much worth it. It's going to give you a free neutronium alloy worth of resistance while it's active. Now it is going to debuff you for a minus 400 protonic damage resist rating. Now, odds are that's not really going to be an issue unless you're fighting very specific enemies or you're fighting in a PvP situation. But it is worth making a note of because that can be a double-edged sword depending on the situation. Now, some other devices you might like are the energy amplifier batteries, a large power battery, Chevanite hardpoints, anything like that. But point being, you've got some options with your devices. Now, as far as console layout goes, this is a 3 engineering, 3 science, and 5 tactical console layout. So it's kind of generalized, but kind of not, if that makes sense. It leans more towards the tactical department. Now for this particular ship, we have in our engineering slots, we have our reinforced armaments console, which is going to complete our trilithium 2-piece. This particular console is going to give us a good chunk of EPS on the budget level, which is going to be good. This is also going to complete our trilithium 2-piece, and we'll examine that in just a minute. Then we have the money console that we purchased. This is the Deconstructive Resonance Emitter. This actually comes out of the Swarm box and is going to give us a little bit of phaser and a little bit of kinetic damage, Cat 1, as well as a nice little activatable effect. And this is actually pretty cheap. I think it cost us about $400K at the time that I bought it, which may have gone up slightly since then, but anyway. Then we have our Chains of Fire console, which actually comes with the ship, and we'll take a look at the bonuses in game. Good lord, the Jem'Hadar is dancing. Alright, so for this particular console, the... oh, go ahead.
I'm doing an advanced samba.
Ah,
Of
very an
course he
elite
is.
move.
But anyway, for this particular console, the numbers are going to be slightly distorted because we're sitting in a ground map as we're broadcasting. But for this particular console, you're going to get a boost to fire damage, which is actually pretty interesting that we're getting fire damage in space now. And we also get a bit of impulse expertise and some control expertise. And basically what this does is whenever you activate it, it's going to shoot out little hooks that embed into the enemy ship. It's going to deal a bit of fire damage up front, as well as putting a fire damage burn on the target and pull them towards you. I know me and Timber actually tested this out a little bit on Tribble, and we were dragging some pretty good-sized ships around with this console.
Absolutely. And one thing that we were messing around with idea-wise, and this is something, if you love science, it's going to work very nicely for you. This ship, if I remember the bridge officer layout, can get at least one, if not two levels of tractor beam repulsors. So one thing we were looking at is if you have access to the Graga Maul duty officer, which turns tractor beam repulsors into a pull, pulling your targets closer to you, could use that combination with this console. So now you're pulling them with two different effects, getting two different types of damage on the target at the same time, which would be a pretty nice combo to go with. And you definitely control the battlefield from what we were seeing. They would not be going anywhere for a few seconds while you're holding them.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to talk more about the trait once we get to the traits area, because this opens up some possibilities now that we're actually getting fire damage in space. This is actually, I believe, the first ship and console to actually give us a fire damage type effect in space. So
Right.
This is going to be interesting to see how they build on this in the future. And for all we know, fire damage might become a thing. It might.
I mean,
Well-
cold damage became a big thing, and there's not many things that can resist that, so.
Well, I mean, we already have one thing that does fire damage. It was kind of halfway confirmed during the reveal, during the dev talk about it. And this console will boost the heavy weapon that does fire damage. I believe it was one that comes with the Bajoran Raider. And correct me if I'm wrong on that one. But it's from the Bajoran Raider that you can get. And that particular heavy weapon does do fire damage to its targets. So this would actually boost it.
Kinetic.
No, there was one that actually did fire damage. It was something that they said it would actually get boosted for. I'll have to bring it up.
I'll have to look that up, because
Yeah.
I thought this was the first. But, anyway, regardless, moving on while Timber's actually looking for that. For our science consoles, we have some staple consoles that we've used quite a bit. We have our assimilated module, which is going to give a good bit of critical chance and severity, which is very nice to have on the budget end. It is going to give a minor amount of control expertise, which is worth making a note of. We also have our quantum phase converter, which is going to give a good bit of phaser damage. This is also going to round out our quantum phase 3 piece, and it is, Timber's actually found it for us, it is the Phlogiston Projector.
And it does do fire damage.
Okay. So, it's looking like fire damage is actually potentially going to be a thing. But I guess we'll have to see how that goes fully. But for our final science console, we have the Temporal Disentanglement Suite, which is going to give us a nice chunk of shield capacity, a bit of shield damage resistance. We're also going to get a critical chance and critical severity boost based on our Aux power as well. And that is going to round out the two-piece for the temporal core as well, which is going to boost Tetryon damage, which isn't really helping us, but it is something to make a note of, in case anybody's kind of curious. Then for our tactical consoles, we have 4 of the phaser relays, and then we have the multi-conduit energy relay, which is going to round out our biomolecular two-piece. Now, getting into our set bonuses, we're going to pull some of those up in game for you guys. For our trilithium stuff, we're actually going to get a 2.5% chance to gain 10% firing cycle haste for energy weapons off of our Trilithium Omni. Then once we take into account our 2-set bonus, you're getting a 5% firing cycle haste for energy weapons and 15 flight speed, which is going to be a static thing that's going to be on all the time. So bare minimum, you're picking up a bit of firing cycle haste, potentially 10% more, which will stack with other haste effects. So if you've got anything like the old Crenum console, if maybe you've got the tactical computer from the Odyssey, anything that grants haste will work with effects like this. Then for a Bajoran 2-piece, I kind of already covered that, which is basically just a static Category 1 to Phaser, Disruptor, and Plasma damage. Then for our Quantum Phase items, basically this is going to give you some extra buffs to the drain that you get on the Quantum Phase items. It's also going to give you that nasty little Phaser attack that, I believe that one drained a little bit of power and gave it back to you. And then it also dealt a heavy amount of phaser damage to the foes as well, if I'm remembering my set bonuses right.
You are.
Okay, thank you, sir, for confirming that. Yeah, like I say, that's going to be something very nasty, and although it doesn't actually say that on the items, we've been able to confirm through testing that the 3-piece does in fact get boosted by your phaser damage. So anything that will buff your phasers will buff that 3-piece bonus from your Quantum Phase, in addition to any EPG and drain type effects. Alright, moving along to our skills. It's pretty much our standard pilot review layout. We've got 14 engineering, 14 science, and 18 points in tactical. Now, we can give a, if anybody's wanting it, we can give a more technical explanation as to why we end up, or why we ended up picking the points that we did. But that would put us here at least another 30 minutes at least explaining that. So we'll have a video for you guys that actually want a more technical explanation. But for those folks that want to just copy a build down and roll with it, you can see our lieutenant level points here, and our lieutenant commander. You can see our commander rank points, our captain, and then our admiral rank points. Then for our specializations, we went with Intel Primary and Miracle Worker Secondary. This is going to give you a nice balance of damage and survival at the same time, because you want to have good damage, but you don't want to gimp the ship in terms of survival as well. Then, moving on to our traits, and then we'll look at our Bridge Officer layout. Now for our personal space traits, we have the Beam Training, which is going to be free beam damage. Beam Barrage is our R&D crafting trait. We always assume you leveled at least one crafting school, and in this case we've chosen beams. We have Elusive for free defensive value, Fleet Coordinator for free damage based on the amount of people in your party, a 2% minimum, and a 10% maximum in terms of damage. We have our Grace Under Fire, career-specific trait for engineers. This is because the builder actually defaults to an engineer. If you're not an engineer, but you want to use the build, then swap out Grace Under Fire for your own career-specific trait, and you're good to go. Then we have our Nanite Repair Matrix from the Midnight Mission. This is going to be a nice little heal effect every so often when it's needed. Then we have our Point Blank Shot from House Peg, which is going to be a nice Category 2 damage bonus the closer you are to the target, up to a certain maximum. We have Operative, just for a little bit of crit chance and severity. It's not much, but it's decent enough on the budget end. Then we have our Redirected Armor Plating. Your Redirected Armor Plating is going to give you free damage resistance whenever you're shot on the sides or in the behind. So,
we're all adults here. You can say shot in the butt.
I set him up for that one. I'm glad he took it. Then for our Starship traits, this is another build where we're actually able to utilize all 4 of our slots. And in this case, we have our Best Defense, which is going to grant a hull healing effect along with the normal effects of our attack patterns. We have our Going the Extra Mile from our Miracle Worker, which is going to give a bit of free temporary health when we heal somebody above 90%. We have our predictive algorithms, which is going to give a bit of accuracy, as well as some other nice effects. Then, finally, we have our Maw of Grethor trait. And basically, when we're at full throttle, we're going to be shooting flames out the butt end of our ship and dealing fire damage initially and over time to the foes that we affect. And then we'll talk about that trait in just a second. For our space reps, we have our advanced target systems for the free crit sev. We have our Aux Power Offensive, which is going to be a accuracy and a damage increase based on the amount of Aux Power we have. Precision for some free critical hit chance, and Magnified Firepower for a bit of free Category 2 damage boosting. For active reputations, we have our Anti-Time Entanglement Singularity, which is a nice little AoE effect and slow. Then we have our Biomolecular Shield Gen. This is going to be damage reduction to the shields and a little bit of healing to them for anybody that stays inside it. Deploy Sensor Interference Platform is a nice little oh crap we're going to die button. You can throw this little platform up and it will taunt enemies to itself until it either runs out of duration or it gets destroyed, whichever of those two things happens first. Then lastly, we have our Quantum Singularity Manipulation. This is going to give a pretty hefty boost to your science stats for the duration it's active. To get a lot more bang for your buck out of your anti-time, pop some exotic buffs first, follow with Quantum Singularity Manipulation, crack your anti-time on top of them, and you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck that way. Now, for this particular trait, we'll take just a second to discuss this, because this is where it kind of gets interesting. And we can see some of the values here. You're going to get a bit of fire damage initially, and then a fire damage over time effect while you're at full throttle to foes behind you. Now, the damage numbers again are kind of distorted because we're on a ground map, but yeah, quick thoughts from you guys for, because I know Timber had some thoughts on this one, and then we'll look at our bridge officers.
It looks solid to me, to be honest. I mean, you know me, I try to limit my costs as much as I can. I'm leery of exchange prices, but the good thing about the exchange console you picked is there was never really any high demand for it initially, so the cost of it was never an initial high price. That's been a good thing. And I like what it's looking like. I would just like to see it in action.
What about the trait, good sir?
The trait was the other thing that me and Blade were scheming about because of what we talked about earlier, pairing Chains of Fire with Tractor Beam Repulsors and Gragamal. We were talking about the fact that since you're pulling all these targets, there is an opportunity for something very fun, and it's called the trait, in which while you're pulling all these targets, why not burn them to death while you're doing it? And that was actually working. I mean, you're not seeing tremendous, massive damage from it, but the simple fact you're pulling targets behind you and then you're burning them with the trait is pretty hilarious. And it was fun, very fun to watch, especially when Blade was doing it as a tank. So, might not be useful in all runs, but as a niche build and something that just creates laughs, go for it.
Yep. But anyways, looking at our bridge officer layout, and then for this particular ship, you have a Commander Tactical, Ensign Tactical, Lieutenant Engineer, Lieutenant Commander Science, and then a Lieutenant Commander Universal / Pilot. So it's not as centralized as some of the ships we've seen before, though it does lean a bit more towards the tactical department. Now, for this particular ship here, we'll start with our tactical bridge officers. We have our Tactical Team 1, which is going to redirect our shields a good bit and purge boarding parties. We have our Cannon Scatter Volley to take advantage of our turret. And since we're using that turret for its Cat 2 damage bonus that it's going to give with its 2-piece, that's going to be very nice to have on here. Then we have our Beam Fire at Will 3, which is going to let us smack anything in range with a beam. Then we have our Attack Pattern Beta 3 to cheese a little extra debuffing on the enemies. And then for our Ensign Tactical, we have our Torpedo Spread to throw some torps around. For Lieutenant Commander Science, we have a Science Team 1, a Hazard Emitters 2, and a Gravwell 1. So basically some shield healing, some healing over time in terms of the Hazard Emitters, which is also going to purge Plasma Fire from us. And then we have our Gravity Well to help group things up and control it. For our Lieutenant Engineering, we've got a Engineering Team 1. This is going to heal our hull a little bit, as well as purge viral matrix effects. We have our Reverse Shield Polarity to recharge our shields in a pinch, based off of incoming damage. Then, for our Lieutenant Commander Universal / Pilot. This particular seat we changed to an Engineer. We have our Emergency Power to Engines 1, which is going to give us a nice little boost to engine power when we need it, into our speed. For a pilot power, we actually have the Hold Together power. While we're at the full throttle, we're going to be healing a little bit, which can be changed for a more offensive type power if you think you're good on defense and survival. Then finally, we have our Emergency Power to Weapons 3 to round it out, which is going to give a pretty hefty damage bonus while active, as well as a nice chunk of weapons power. As far as total cost for the build, you were looking at about 400,000 EC at the time we bought it. We've seen some of these consoles go for about 1 million in the meantime, so between 400,000 to 1 million EC. And then as far as total dilithium, you're looking at 30,625 for about 4 days of build time, assuming only one tune is refining dilithium per day. But yeah, that's what we've got for a budget build this evening. Yeah, any other thoughts from you guys?
His build is also budget. What is not to like, comrade?
It also has fire. It's
And
also
spread.
not caused from enemy fire sometimes.
But anyways, we hope you guys like the budget build and whatnot. Like I say, this is just kind of to give you guys ideas and everything. We wanted to do one for this particular ship because, like we were saying earlier, we know that this is sometimes the very first Tier 6 ship that people will get. Maybe one of the only Tier 6 ships they'll actually have for a long time. And we want to make sure people are able to enjoy it. But anyways, coming up on our RP Corner for the evening, we have our RP Corner with Artie. What have you got for us in our final wrap-up party of the year, dude?
Alright, well, I'm going to do a little bit of a sit rep with our past few PRS RP events, and kind of talk base with the two major players of the game and see what your thoughts are. So, pull up the map. As you can tell, yeah, we've moved a lot of allies towards where the major fighting has been in this scenario, and in this past game, we actually got a lot of we got a lot of relics and various other debris from the battlefield over at Starbase 37 from these guys, and now we get to see what their technology is all about. You know, we're going to be able to send that off to Cruzan's people, which I just forgot the name.
The Azurians.
Thank you. And we'll get to send that off to them, and we'll get to see what that pulls up, which that would be, you know, next episode. For the most part, we'll just be continuing with this campaign for the next few weeks, depending on how it goes. It may end early due to, you know, maybe Cruzan and Captain Torrance just end up being really good and just wins the war immediately, or, you know, it may prolong for another maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and who knows. But moving on, I'm actually wondering what you two actually think of the game so far, and what you're actually hoping to see, you know, coming out later.
Well, needs more Cruzan, just saying.
More Scottish accent. That wasn't even a Scottish accent. I'm terrible at accents. Whatever. Yes.
Which, to be fair, people, everything for those of you that have been keeping up with our RP event, I did not for the life of me intend for him to have a Scottish accent. It's just, I wanted to try to do something that seemed like he was a foreigner. You know, like he's not from... I know I'm digging myself even deeper the more I talk, but...
Yeah.
But basically I wanted him to seem like he was alien. Obviously he's from a different species. They may talk differently and everything compared to humans, compared to some of the regular races of the Federation, and that's just how it came out. That's just how it came out. I did not intend for it to do that. That's just what ended up happening.
RP tips from Blade. You want to act alien? Talk Scottish.
Oh, God.
East Space Scotland.
And we've also learned that, rolling crits from your friends, especially Spoon, will actually save your bacon.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Spoon coming in at the last few minutes of the not this past game, but the previous game, we would have lost literally everyone. It would have taken a while to make a better new offensive against the unknown enemy, and it's just you guys wouldn't have much of an episode this the last game we had if Spoon didn't really come in and save a lot of people. We would have been doing a lot of logistics, and you may have had only like maybe 3 ships be able to go in and actually collect anything. So, I'm actually happy that Spoon's able to come in and save the day.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, we're fighting this giant dreadnought. Well, here's a natural 20 for the crit, and it's just like, oh crap. Well, at least for the dreadnought, anyway.
Yeah. How about you, Timber? Your thoughts on the RP?
I'm honestly loving it. Definitely been an interesting experience to say the least. I don't look forward to combat. You know, just because I think you cheated dice.
Do you think I cheated dice?
Hey, I almost lost in a cell in the last combat scenario. Just saying.
Sir, I rolled the GM dice, the single-sided dice that says GM rules. Player sheds cake hole.
On the other side, do they say purchased in Las Vegas?
That's the 2-sided dice.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it because I want to see how it's going to pan out, and then prospects for season 2. Because with the story that we're building up, obviously someone's going to be pissed off by the end of it. That we know, a power that we know. So how does it branch out? And I'm definitely looking forward to that in the coming year, is how it's going to branch out beyond what we're doing currently. Because I have a pretty good gut feeling we're going to get out of this, and we'll find ourselves on the winning side, but it's the aftermath that concerns me.
You're right, because as of last episode, I mean, Federation, the Klingons came up with a way to get the Tholians in, and they just gave them Nukara. Nukara is officially Tholian territory.
Yeah.
And the Tholians are now in on the fight. I mean, we got the Dominion now going to bring in backup, and the Cardassians as well. Hell, you even got the Romulan Star Empire, what's left of them, coming up to assist.
Yeah, I mean, we had some pretty good rolls.
Yeah, we did. We really did.
The aftermath from this, you may have a new, territorial skirmishes between the major factions. You may have the Second Klingon War. You may have the Romulan Republic saying, screw you.
I just want to say that the Aftermath was the best expansion pack for Command & Conquer Red Alert. Anyway, continue on.
Well, my biggest thing, and
jeez.
who knows if it'll happen, is the Typhon Pact. It's something, if you've read the novels out there, for anybody that's watching, the Typhon Pact happened after the Destiny series, in which the Borg were wiped. They weren't wiped out, they were more or less converted. So they're no longer a threat. And the aftermath had the Breen and the Romulans and several other races. They became basically their own version of the United Federation of Planets, with their own motives, of course, because they don't trust anybody. And something tells me something like that could creep up. So it's like, okay, we get rid of an extragalactic threat, and then we're dealing with a threat that now is allied against us because we're being blamed. And I could see that happening.
I could definitely see that too.
Oh yeah.
But I look forward to it.
There's actually a few things that I've actually had one of our viewers mention to me offhandedly, and I'm surprised you guys haven't noticed. What I'll go ahead and just point out now. On the map, you may notice that there's that 2 fleets, small fleets above Drozana that you said, hey, let's move those guys away.
Yeah.
In universe, they ignored your order. They just stayed comms quiet.
Oh, we have a mutiny against a fleet command then.
We don't know. They're just no comms in or out from those 2 fleets. The other thing is, the 2 fleets up by the Breen, they've been stopped by the Breen. It's the same bit. We don't know what's going up on there, up there.
Huh.
Yeah.
Damn it, now I gotta investigate.
Gadzooks, he's right.
Hey, I'm just throwing stuff that was already there. I'm just surprised no one caught on. I got like this 2 paragraphs of rant going, hey, these fleets aren't moving. What's going on? They said to move these fleets. Why aren't you moving these fleets? I'm like, oh, cold your jets, dude. There's reasons. I'll point it out if you like it.
Do. You have 10 minutes to move your fleet. Do. Your fleet has been crushed into a cube. Do. You have 10 minutes to move your cube.
Yeah, that would be something that he would come up with out of the blue.
Oh yeah.
Oh, and something Timber will get a kick out of is I finally provided Artie with a map of where Cruzan's homeworld is. It's way out in the middle of butt crack nowhere where you wouldn't think that they would be.
Can we actually pull up that map?
I'm thinking that it's on the...
Yes, we can, actually.
I'm thinking it's in the Sugarcane Nebula.
Near the Lollipop asteroid belt?
It's
No.
pretty far, yeah.
Give that just a moment to pull up.
Yeah, because this map will actually be useful at next game.
I mean, the thing is, you want to live around the sugarcane. You don't want to have to roam very far.
Hey.
God.
So, because of how far away they are normally from Federation space and everything, I just kind of put little dots on the map for Artie so he can see them. And let's give this just a moment to pull up. Okay, so... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say while we were waiting, but have you got it up?
Giggity. And yes, I do, actually. So, I'm going to zoom in so you guys can see it a little bit. Now, we've got our alpha and beta quadrants here. You can see like some of the alpha quadrant sectors we've got on the map. We've got our beta quadrant sectors. Up here we've got our delta quadrant sectors that Voyager moved through, some of them on their way back to the alpha quadrant. Then we have our Solanae Dyson Sphere just inside the delta quadrant. And then these 9 little sectors right here, near the galactic core and on the border of the beta and delta quadrants, we actually have Cruzan's people. And that center sector is the homeworld. So, yeah, that's actually, at least as far as headcanon, where I put them anyway. So, being in the delta quadrant, you can imagine they fought with the Borg. I actually wrote them a little bit as being about 15 years ahead of the Federation in terms of anti-Borg weaponry. They're about maybe 5 years ahead of the Federation in just regular tech. So that puts them in line with the Makos from Enterprise. If you guys remember those, the Makos, they were about 3 years ahead of everybody else in terms of technology. So I kind
They
of
just didn't have a ship.
yeah, they just didn't have a ship. So I kind of rolled with that, and I figured, as to how I'm explaining some of the stuff, is that as far as the biotorpedoes, they already had a lot of knowledge of, basic, engineering, molecular engineering, but through some of their scraps with the Borg, they've been able to get pieces of Borg tech. They've been able to reverse engineer some of it. They've been able to reverse engineer the nanites, use those, and that's how they're able to produce the biotorps really quick. Then you've got, They have Borg transwarp technology they've adapted, and also slipstream technology. And then there's a whole storyline that I've got as to how they actually come into contact with that, which we'll probably have to explore in later games. But one bit I can say is one way they get easy contact with the Federation is they just haul butt. Well, now after the first initial contact, they haul butt to the Solanae sphere, and they just a little hop, skip, and a jump through a Iconian gateway, and they're in Federation space. But yeah, that's oh, go ahead.
So, a little bit of GM funny for audience. You make it sound like, yeah, these guys are all open and everything. Well, now you may know that it's maybe a little bit of a disadvantage for you.
Well, like I say, I wrote it for Borg Tech. I didn't say crap about extragalactic invaders.
You see where I'm getting at.
Mm-hmm.
I've
But
got
no,
an
no.
extragalactic invader.
I don't want to know where that is.
Yeah,
It's,
no.
it's extragalactic.
Okay, he did. Yeah, I ran into that one. Oh
Yep.
wait,
Yep.
Oh God.
You
Ooh.
ran into that hook, line, and sucker.
yeah.
Ew.
So yeah, that's some of the fun, potentially, we might be working with pretty soon.
But yeah, that's basically it. We got the updates, we got the thoughts, and what we may be moving on to. Next game will probably be in the first week or so of that's coming up January. So we'll get that covered and pat down when we get the next show up after New Year's. So there you go.
Do you ever think about, guys, what it's like when they're filling out all the death certificates for Starfleet officers? What would happen to the one that died playing in the band here in Club 47? They'd be all like, let's see, fill out the form. Cause of death, quote, patient laid down the boogie and played the funky music till he died, unquote.
And I would laugh.
I would feel bad trying to tell his family he boogie oogie oogied and died.
He boogie oogie oogied until he couldn't boogie no more.
I mean, he played that funky music, white boy. What can you say?
So is this what the rest of this episode's going to be, like a bunch of bad puns?
I mean, I'm thinking this is
Every
the title
episode.
of the entire thing.
Oh, jeez. But, so yeah, that's our two segments that we do have. But since this is kind of our end-of-the-year wrap party, we're probably going to be running a little bit longer than what we normally do. But since we're all kind of here and everything, at least the ones that are normally on camera a good bit and everything, I know Boss Man's off doing some behind-the-scenes stuff for you guys. We're working on some stuff with that. So hopefully you all will see some more stuff out of the show. We're trying to get back to our roots a little bit more. We're trying to do more with the piloting and stuff, because after all, we are the pilot review show. But not going to spoil anything just yet for you guys, not until Boss Man's ready to announce it. But anyways,
I just want to say I reviewed your piloting Darkblade, and it sucks.
do we need to go into Karat, good sir, and settle this?
No, but I can think of some helicopters in Bolivia that are no longer in one piece.
Okay, in my defense, one, that's a different game. Two, do I not always get us to our destination, even if the helicopter doesn't survive?
The passengers survive, the helicopter or its rotors generally don't.
Yes, but we survive, and that's the thing. And plus,
Okay.
can you
Hey,
honestly
you know what?
sit there with a straight face and tell me you don't enjoy sniping a bunch of Sicarios or Unidad to steal a new chopper?
Oh yeah. No, I think my favorite thing is what we did the other night. Would you like to tell everybody what we did the other night?
Why not when you put it that way?
So,
Anyway.
just so you know, we're talking about another game. We kidnapped a cartel gang member, stuck him in the passenger seat of a Black Hawk helicopter, took him to about 2,000 kilometers high, or 2,000 meters high, and then jumped out of the helicopter and let him fall on his buddies on the base below us.
And the funny thing is, he actually did land on one of his buddies down below. We saw the little kill icon pop up and laughed our butts off.
So what you're telling me is that you decide to capture a high-value target,
Oh, he
The
wasn't a
middle
high
of
value. That's the thing. He wasn't high value.
He wasn't high value.
So
He
what you're
wasn't valuable
saying
at all.
is STO ground combat needs a revamp? What?
I
Yeah,
mean,
we
I'm
need
not
ground
going to
vehicles
complain if they added vehicles, but you know.
Hey, it's something.
I-
It's something in 2019. I do hope they have because we have quite a few maps that you could have a hovercraft of some kind, or the Argo, for that matter. I mean, the Argo is canon, where you could move, as a team in a combat scenario, like let's say Voth Battle Zone or something. It'd be nice to have that kind of option.
Yeah,
True.
Not only just have it for yourself, you may be the one that owns it, but maybe
Yeah.
if you're in a team, just someone gets in the back gun. You got a guy riding shotgun.
And they
I
did
mean,
have
it's
weapons.
canonical. It's canonical. We saw it in Nemesis.
Yeah.
And it has a weapon, so you could use it as a combat vehicle as well. Nothing crazy. It doesn't have to be,
That's the full-on
40,000,
Yeah.
40,000 different mounts like World of Warcraft, where it's just like, hey, Alliance, you get another horse, on top of the other 40,000 you already have.
I would just be
Um,
happy to see a new expansion that features it in at least one mission. I get that it might be difficult to put it in the rest of the game, but
Right.
so the last expansion had, Ocean's 11 with Ferengi, so this one could be the Yeehaw. We have a 4x4 space truck.
Yeah. That would be an interesting addition, even if it's just mission only.
And
To add a
then-
new variation
You
of
know what?
combat.
It needs either an Easter egg or an upgrade option to expand the plasma exhaust for deeper burbles.
That's funny. I've got the hiccups all of a sudden. But anyway. So yeah, I guess that's one of the things we'd like to see implemented in 2019. So I guess we'll start with that one first, something each of the hosts would like to see. But as far as me personally, I would honestly... I don't know, I'd like to see us finally get a mission reward plasma set. That way we have a second Omni to work. Oh, good lord. If I quit hiccuping long enough.
Hold your breath.
That only lasts for like 2 minutes.
Hold
Maybe
your
less.
breath and drink from the far side of a glass while upside down.
I'll agree with Blade on that one. A plasma set. And I would dare say something similar to the chronometric Polaron set. So you've got a beam array and cannon option. You've got a console. You've got a plasma torpedo. I would hope for another energy torpedo because, well, the ones that isn't in the game currently, And then you got a Omni and a turret. Like, that would be a nice addition to plasma.
Yep.
Well, it seems like plasma is a bit underrepresented anyway. I mean, we have Romulans as a primary race. They should have a good primary set. We definitely have Polarons and Phasers now and Disruptors, so,
And even to the point, there's a good bit for Tetrion. And there's decent amounts for Anti-Proton, but plasma is heavily underutilized even at the budget level. In order to make a budget build for plasma, just going off of just basic mission rewards, you're going to be sold very short.
Gromlin and plasma, by extension, are sort of seen as a premium thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But it would be nice to see it as a budget end in case you want to use it from day one. It would be a nice option.
Yep. Like I say, that's one of my gripes, because now we've got, like I say, several options for Phaser. You've got several options for Disruptor, and all of the other energy types. But Plasma is just... And that's not to say that Plasma didn't get some good upgrades with this Tier 6 stuff, because they absolutely did. But it's just, to me, they need that icing on the cake. On the cake! To... They just need that little bit of icing on the cake to kind of finish it off. It's like, it's right there. It's right on the cusp of being where I would want it to be. And good lord, if I can't freaking...
Well, I mean, nobody's knocking that Plasma did get some decent upgrades when it comes to T6 rep, but we're talking about, when you compare to things like Trilithium, Quantum Phase, Morphogenic, Nausicaan, these kind of sets that people use still from the budget level or at the high end for all these different energy types, to have nothing come close to that at the mission reward level for plasma is, it's like,
Yep.
It'd be nice to, even if it was just repeatable, because really the only good repeatable plasma weapons that I've seen in the game for any kind of build come from Ragnarok. Those are Mark 12 very rares, but it's only single cannons or dual beam banks. And you can get plasma infusion tactical consoles in like at least 2 missions, I want to say. You get the tactical consoles, but there's no... I think the only repeatable beam arrays and other weapons are Mark 11 blues that have 2 accuracy mods on them from a very, very early mission. I think it's even in the Klingon arc or maybe Romulan arc when you're first leveling up.
I think it is, actually.
There's very little. And then you get things like the Bajoran set and others that they give a decent plasma boost. There's just not enough gear unless you start adding on to it from crafting or other sources. There's not a lot by comparison. It just... People forget about plasma, I think, because by the time they're getting to that high end, they've already gotten used to another energy type. Why invest in another energy type like plasma when you've already done plenty of work for Polaron with the Jem'Hadar tomb? Because of all that you already get, plus Morphogenic, or all the different phaser things you've already gotten used to. It just comes down to, I think it's a forgotten energy type sometimes.
Which that also makes sense why they allow the Romulans to use their factions' ships. Like, Romulans is aligned with the Federation, get Federation ships, so on and so forth. So that does make sense that they get used to using phasers or using whatever that isn't plasma.
Well,
yeah.
I would, as far as using the faction ships, using your allied ships, in that instance, that more comes down to the fact that, okay, well, the Jem'Hadar were going to start out as being able to do that, so it would have been seen as kind of a slap in the face by Romulan players if they didn't get to do the same thing.
That's true. That's true.
And
yeah.
Which, like I say, don't get me wrong, I get what you're saying, and I agree to some extent. But, like I say, plasma, it's in a place where it can be good, it can be equal to the other types. It just needs that last little oomph, that last little push to get it up over that hill to where it needs to be. And that's, I know me and Timber were discussing this the other day, was the fact that, like we were saying, and this is why, for me anyway, I want to see a plasma set implemented, is because I like plasma. Everything, it's, I actually like using it. I hate that it just doesn't give me as much as some of my other energy types do. Whereas a lot of people, they prefer Phaser, Disruptor, or Anti-Proton. I'm one of those weirdos that I like Polaron, give me Polaron all day long, or Tetrion even, or even Plasma. Just because, that's the energy types I started with, that's what I'm used to. That would give them a second Omni, that way they're not feeling like they're getting pigeonholed into, some other energy type, or pretty much anything like that.
I just like the fact that now that you can craft your own, you're not limited to whatever beams you can get with whatever tags you want on them, Like, I used to, before you could craft your own, I used to have to buy Polaron Crit D3 because they were cheap, And so all my stuff was Polaron. It gets tiring after a while. Now it's like, oh, I can do phasers, I can do this, I can do that. I can have canonical builds on my ships. I love it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, for me, there's 2 big plasma options they could have added in, one of which I just thought about, to be honest with you, driving home from dinner. The first one, I put this out on my production page, and it was cryoplasma. Because the Breen have cryoplasma warp cores, that kind of thing. There could have been, with the Winter Event store, since they haven't had anything space item update-wise in years in the store. The last thing was the endothermic inhibiting beam. I think it was, 3 years ago? I think that was the last addition to the space items for Winter Event.
I think so, yeah.
Has it really been 3 years? Good lord.
I think so.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So, go with and it could be special only, so it's the set only, and you can't get any others of this. but cryoplasma. So you have a cryoplasma special beam, a cryoplasma energy torpedo, maybe a console. The console would boost cold damage, and the procs would be cold damage that ignores shields. And that would be an interesting way to put plasma that could be used at the high end, also at the budget level. Easy to access from the winter event, because that's just pie eating. It's just something simple. And then the other thing that came to mind is, for years now, thanks to Delta Rising, we've been dealing with the cooperative. They could introduce in the near future where the cooperative are on a new offensive against a new enemy. So the reputation is around cooperative Borg technology, which could introduce new plasma types. And you've got plasma special weapons in that particular setup. Those are the two things I was thinking of, and that might, bring plasma up there, because plasma's got some good options, but it doesn't have near the options even after tier 6 that some of these other energy types do. I mean, by far it cannot compete options-wise with Polaron, Phaser, or Disruptor. By far. It would just be nice to see it being brought up with something unique again. Get it back on par with the other energy types.
Alrighty. Can see that. What about you, Sir Artie? Something, if you had to pick, you would like to see perhaps implemented?
Okay, so I like what they've been doing with a lot of the more recent ships. They got the various new pilot ships. The Andorians, the other guys, and whatnot. And they're doing a lot of cool things with all these new ships, all these new energy types, all the new mechanics that they're adding in with every new console. What I would like to see, well, at least one of these two things, if I had to choose between the two things. One, fleet versions of the pilot ships.
Okay.
Yeah, because remember those first off pilot ships, you get the Klingon, the Romulan, the Federation pilot ships that you get right then and there in the Iconian War. They don't have fleet versions. They're just right there. That's cut and dry. You get your 3 different career types, and that's it. Then you got, your new tier 6 with the Andorians, the Daewon types, and the Lethians, the Lethian pilot ships. And yeah, I mean, that works. They also do not have I don't know if they do have a fleet type for those yet. So it's just like pilots are getting thrown out the window. I mean, you got fleet versions for a lot of the intel ships, command cruisers, and temporal ships and stuff like that. Just nothing for pilot. On the other hand, on that, why not just add a new pilot ship altogether that's supposed to be along the lines of a tier 6 version when you have a fleet? Some of you may remember back before tier 6 was a thing, or maybe even during the early days of tier 6, there was the Aquarius Light Escort. When you're in a fleet, you can get one of these ships, no problem really. You just need the fleet credits and the slots. That's about it. And then they had their fleet version for that. That worked out pretty well for that. It was a small raider, a Federation raider. You can equip a cloaking device on it, no problem. It worked out brilliantly. It was basically a miniature Defiant with a little bit more gun-ho.
Yep.
And I mean, yeah, the Klingons had their own version with the Hosu, but the Klingons they get all the cool stuff anyway with that type of raider flanking and stuff like that. But after that, there was no tier 6 boost for anything like that. I mean, there's been a ship model for what could be a upgraded Aquarius Light Escort tier 6, which is the Calypso Escort that you see with the Jupiter carriers. So that would be a cool ship to actually implement as a new fleet ship, fleet-only ship. Like, not the Zenstor, not Lobi or anything. An actual, you gotta gun down with your fleet, gotta get the marks, gotta get all the stuff for your fleet, and there's a new ship. Boom, there you go. That would be another cool thing to kind of bring the player base kind of back together to get some of these cool, unique things that not many people really play anymore because everyone's going, oh, the best thing to do is going with any of these the C-store ships, or the best thing is to go with the ships that you get only from Lockbox. That's you don't get the cool little itty bitty Aquarius being an actual gun-ho thing anymore. You don't get that feeling with the showing up to a PvE queue and having someone go, oh, you're using that ship, cool. Now it's just like, what is that? I have no idea what that is. It's kind of obscure. It's kind of been pushed aside. So having a new version of that, I feel like, would be something cool to see in 2019.
Alrighty. Sounds like an interesting thing. And what about you, Sir Creo? Anything in particular you would like to see in 2019?
Well, what I want from I disagree with you. I think the reason people don't play the game anymore is because it's such a bug-riddled nightmare. Just like Windows, just like Mac OS, just like Linux. They need to stop features, new things, new, shiny, and flashy, and they need to go back and fix what they've already got. There's so many bugs that have been around since almost the inception of the game that it's sort of frightful. It's like, okay, I mean, it's cool, you're an MMO, you gotta make money. I get that, so you need to release lockbox ships, you need to release expansions. But how about instead of a spring expansion, we expand quality assurance or quality control and go back and fix a lot of the stuff that's broke? Taking 2 months to fix bridge officers not appearing on Kobali Prime is a travesty. I'm sorry. And every time they release a patch, it breaks something. They have to patch that, which breaks the original patch. So they patch the patch that patch the patch, patching the patch. And it's like, just fix it right the first time. Just take the time. There's no rush schedule here. You know what I mean? So what I would like to see in 2019 is that they slow the F down and take their time and do it right.
Can I change my answer?
Sure.
I have to agree with this. Not at the point of, I mean, yeah, the cool and flashy stuff is, it's cool and flashy.
You gotta have it. It's an MMO. You gotta have it.
Yeah, but if you could have cool and flashy, but if it doesn't work due to previous stuff, then you kind of lose traction of where you're going. I see where you're getting at. So
Yeah, I mean, they've got a
there's been
lot.
bugs since back in before free to play with an actual thing. Back when it was pay. There was still stuff back in the first few missions that they've been trying to fix. Yeah,
Visitorps being a prime example.
There you go.
They have never made the invisible torpedo that the gateways launch. They've never made it visible. You just out of nowhere you get creamed by 90,000 damage sometimes, and it's like, what the crap is this?
Which, to be fair, and one good thing along that line is, I believe it was Rose on it was actually on their last stream of the year, actually said they are looking at expanding their QA department and everything. Said they had some people kind of quit at a bad time, which, okay, I get that. People quit, people come and go, not really much you can do about that. But they are looking to expand on that, so that much I can say, because it was already mentioned on stream. But, like I say, I get you when it comes to that. There are some bugs and things I would like to see fixed. And there has been some pretty nasty stuff that has gotten through, which to some extent maybe could be attributed to that. But at the same time, too, I think of it as... some of it in part is, okay, you look at how many people there actually are. Look at how many people are actually, working QA at its peak. That type of thing. Let's say maybe they get, let's say 30 people or 50 people in QA at its peak. And you figure that's, a fair amount of people to try to catch certain things for that sort of thing, but there's always going to be some bugs that, no matter what we do, that are just not going to present themselves until they get to live, until the players start tinkering with them. and end up breaking things. I know we've done that several times.
But I want to butt in here and say that if you have 30 or 50 QA and they are not playing the pre-live version of the game on Tribble, then you don't have 30 or 50 QA. You know what I mean?
I get what you're saying.
And that's also why they have a large team of bug hunters now. So they're trying to fix
larger
that
team,
and stop that.
And I do have to give them credit. They are definitely trying.
They're definitely
to
trying.
improve.
But I think we also have to keep in mind, and this is, like I say, I'm not trying to smack you down or anybody or anything.
Yeah, we're not trying to bash anything.
Yeah, we're not trying to bash anybody. But the big thing I would say, too, is I think we need to keep in mind, in part, they're not as large of a company as Activision Blizzard. Let's face it, with a company like Activision Blizzard, something breaks, they've got a heck of a lot more money that they could throw at it than Cryptic does.
Now stop right there.
Got a lot more people. I'm not saying that excuses bugs.
In
by any
2016, Cryptic filed a $50 million profit to the IRS. $50 million, and they couldn't fix the bugs of 2016. I mean...
Well, like I say, it depends, but again, in a large company, you figure Stowe's not their only game either. Which, again, like I say, that's, we want to see stuff get fixed. We honestly do. But getting back to the point I was trying to make originally, is, you figure you've got the small amount of QA people that they have, and then you figure that's, say, 50 minds, 50 different build styles, 50 different philosophies, that sort of thing, that, you're going to see a lot of different builds. But, okay, you push something out to live where you've got, say, 5 million people playing, or 5 million potential players. That's a lot more build philosophy out there. That's a lot more people putting their brains together. And there's just no way that they can anticipate everything.
That's true, and I agree with that, but it's also silly that it takes 2 months to fix issues, you know what I mean? Once they are discovered.
You say, I would like to see, I mean, everybody would love to see stuff fixed, quicker and everything like that. And, like I say, I agree. But,
that's all. I just, I'm not trying to bash anything.
A little bit faster.
All I want to say is I think they need to focus more on quality than quantity in 2019.
Okay, I can agree with that, I guess.
However they do it, it doesn't matter to me, but for the love of God, do it, You're the only Star Trek game we got, Star Trek Online. You're it. And thankfully, you don't suck. So, just do better.
The last bastion of hope needs to stand.
Exactly.
Like I say, we all want the game to stick around for a while, because, without the game, we wouldn't really have as much of a show. But, anyway, that's one of the big things. Now, getting into another big thing, and this is another question I did kind of want to ask for you guys, is, okay, we talked about some of the stuff we'd like to see happen in 2019, going forward. Now, looking back in retrospect, what would you say is, maybe one of your favorites, or if not, your favorite thing that happened this previous year in Stowe?
The Dominion expansion. Oh my god, it's great.
You, sir, you stole mine. You douchebag. But, no, I have to agree with you. It is actually a good thing. It's something that...
To be fair, I think it deserves the unironic title of the best expansion ever, and the players love it.
I can agree with that.
I'm going to agree with you on that one, with one exception.
Uh-oh.
It was too short of an expansion.
No, but see, that's the thing. Okay, I know that there's probably some weebs that watch this show, and the best thing about some anime shows is that they only have 15 episodes. They didn't drag it out, they didn't overdo it, they didn't lose quality because they were focused on, having a 5-year-long story arc. They just get in, they animate, they tell a story, they get out, they're done, and that's it. And that's what makes those great. And it's the same thing with I can't remember the expansion, whatever it's called, Dominion expansion.
Victory is Life.
Victory is was the TS remake is a bit claustrophobic, and
little robot-y.
Say what? Yeah.
You were going a little robot-y.
But the thing is overall, it really was their best expansion, and certainly the best thing I think they did in 28.
No, I will agree with you on that one. Just for me, and maybe it's not just because it's not just the missions, because the story was great, but I feel with it being, falling in with the 25th anniversary of DS9, and kind of seeing and hearing how DS9 got shortchanged at the conventions as well, I felt they deserved more considering how great of a show it was with what they tackled and how they did character development on the show and how beloved it is. For its anniversary year, if this had been, a couple of years ago and it's an off anniversary, it's like the 18th, it's not a big deal. That'd be one thing, but you're on the 25th, it's actually being hyped up by sources. I was just expecting a bit more before they went to Discovery.
Yeah,
I was expecting that Victory's Life would be lasting until about November, and then they would hype up Age of Discovery to start up with Season 2 of Discovery, to give
You're
DS9
right
a little bit there. That's the only thing I was looking for, because they did a phenomenal job with the story. It honestly felt like you were playing through a couple of episodes of Deep Space Nine Season, let's say 47 at this point, or whatever. But it actually felt like it was a part of the show. You had that thematic, it was good writing, it almost felt like it was good acting, even though it was CGI characters. It was good content. And that's why I agree with you. And then we had the expansion of the level cap and everything else. I just wish it had been longer for the sake of it's the anniversary year. You threw them 2 bones, throw them 3 more, and then you're good. That was my only negative about what I saw. It was just, to me, it was too short for it being an anniversary year.
Yeah, and the thing is I don't think it was overall too short, but they dropped it like a hot potato when they got that Discovery stuff. And I understand why, because that is a revenue stream. Just people, they're going to advertise it on TV, or it's not even on TV, but whatever. And people are going to come play the game, and it'll bring players in, and it'll be fun, and da-da-da. But they really did just kind of like, okay, here's the best expansion ever, and now Discovery.
Yeah.
Yep. Which, one thing I have noticed with Stowe compared to other MMOs, and I don't know if you guys will agree with this or not, but one of the things it seems like that they do is, you could kind of argue we had more stuff than just what little bit we had in the quote-unquote official Victory's Life. Because if you remember there for a while, they hyped up, yeah, we're probably going to go to the Delta Quadrant, look at all these Iconian gateways everywhere. And we had a lot of story leading into the Delta Rising arc. And then we had the Delta Rising expansion drop, which kind of finished it off. Because to me, I've noticed, whereas WoW, they do usually, self-contained expansions. It starts in the expansion, it ends in the expansion. The previous one, Legion. I'm just going to use that as an example. You had the story start with the Burning Legion invaded, and then you might have had, a couple of little precursors coming into it. But for the most part, everything was contained in the expansion. The story finished in the expansion. Whereas with Stowe, they do a lot of precursors, they do some bits of story, and then they kind of drop the official expansion as kind of a cap-off. It finishes up, everything ties off, all the loose ends. Because
Well, except for the Iconian storyline is the worst one to choose as an example for this, but go ahead.
That's debatable. But, anyway, point being, what I'm saying is, they're not, I think we can all agree they're not a traditional MMO. They definitely don't do things the way some of I would say the more well-known MMOs do, that use, even the ones that use I guess what I'm trying to say is, they don't do things by the traditional format a lot of people are seeing, or used to seeing MMOs doing.
Let's just say, quit prevaricating about the bush, and let's say that they don't do it like WoW, which is perfectly okay.
Yeah. And to be fair on that comparison, Delta Rising not only got a decent lead-in, it also got, I want to say, at least a year. Because you first had VOD War lead-in, and then you went into Iconian. That's, it's just, there was more lead-in.
Here's the thing for me, here's what killed Iconian for me, is, man, I dug it. When I first started playing, I thought, this is awesome, it's cool. Hey, look, their brains and chronotons and time travel, and then what do? We travel. We give them back cold hard. What kind of space hippie BS is this?
The war was over in 6 months.
Yeah, what was the point of the brains can handle time travel? Shoot them with a chronoton-infused phaser and move out.
Yeah. I mean, if we're going to compare those two, the best thing about Victory's life over Delta Rising, you actually felt there was a conflict in Victory's life.
Yes.
You felt like you were fighting the Herc wherever you went because it was an actual threat. And even though it was a short expansion, it was a threat. You wanted to be involved in that. It was the entire quadrant, it was at war, quote unquote. You had things you could be involved in, plus the missions. The Iconian War, it's not that big of a deal. Take a month and a half off for Ryza. They're not going to randomly appear in a portal that they could pop up and wreck Ryza. You can have that Mai Tai in the morning. You're good. Whereas the Herc, they just were like, nah, we're going to blitzwreck you, and we don't care where you're at. It felt more combat oriented. That's one of the beautiful things about that expansion.
Well, that's true, but the best part about it was that the writing actually was really good. The Iconian writing, it felt like 3 different people wrote the Iconian arc, and it felt like a team wrote Victory is Life.
Yeah, they definitely did it more justice.
Basically, I guess what you're trying to say is in some instances it felt like the left hand didn't always know what the right hand was doing.
Well, it was like somebody wrote and somebody wrote a couple in the middle, and then that person over there. It's like we read on whole map. It didn't make any sense. It didn't have no direction, and it was like, yeah, they're bad, and oh no, they can just wipe out these ships. And I'm sitting here like one-shotting them with my build, and I'm thinking, what is the threat with these guys?
Fair enough.
But the Herc, on the other hand, you could kill them, just more come, and just more come, and they just keep freaking coming. And Timberwolf is right. It's definitely more combat oriented, and you start to get. I started to get little bits of pain, like oh crap, and writing and stuff was just superior.
Yeah.
Which I have to agree on the universe perspective, because as the role player, the cool thing with Victory is Life is that the Herc showed up. They were demolishing things left, right, and center. Yeah, the Iconian War was a big bad war, whatever. And most RP communities count that as it was longer than 6 months, but that's besides the point. But as we even see in Victory's Life, it wasn't that long of a conflict. It was it wasn't all in the span of a week, but it was a little bit shorter than 6 months, and it was a good few months of conflict, just the Herc just showing up, blowing stuff up, and leaving. While the main characters, you playing the missions, were out gallivanting, doing the stuff in the missions. Everyone else was still holding the Herc back from making sure, like Trill didn't fall, Bajor didn't fall, all these other places just didn't catch on fire to these insects just showing up out of nowhere. It actually felt like, you're in the trenches, and you're making sure these bugs don't just come over and say, hey, the bug spray doesn't work. It felt great.
Plus there was conflict in the missions between your hero characters. I mean, we all felt that betrayal by Odo, and Kira voiced it with her hand against his face. Like,
the slap heard round the galaxy.
I mean, and that goes to Crayo's point about the writing, is it wasn't just an episode that you would watch on TV just from the series. With some of them from DS9, like for me, I connect within the Pale Moonlight. To me, that is a quintessential episode of Star Trek in general. You actually felt the emotion the characters were putting across because they invested in the writing. That's another reason why I'll agree it probably is that quote-unquote best expansion, because you felt it. It wasn't just something you played through. If you took the time to actually immerse yourself in it, where you're going through all the dialogue, you're looking at how the characters interact, you're not just skipping through really quickly, you could actually get invested in the story where you felt like you're a part of it, just as you were watching it on television, where what's going to happen next? Oh my god, that person betrayed that person. What's going to happen? It was an actual emotional investment to some degree because of the writing, because of how they developed the characters. I mean, it was something that was beautifully done. I wanted more of it.
Yeah. I feel like they could have released at least maybe one more episode. You know, like, hey, you know, okay, yeah, we're all back home now, but how's things, you know, with the Dominion and da-da-da-da. I don't know. But anyway, it's getting late, guys, and I will have to drop out of here, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yep. But
I guess one thing we can look forward to potentially from what we're hearing about, since we're talking about DS9, is the potential for this Season 8 that they're working on showing up in the game somehow.
Potentially. Though, I would say one thing in particular. Probably one of my favorite episodes in the game, Quark's Lucky 7. Because, honestly, who doesn't remember the episode The Magnificent Ferengi? Where those bunch of Ferengi go to, I think it was Moogie, they had to rescue from the Dominion.
Oh yeah.
And it went south from the get-go of that episode. And just some of the stuff that you do in Quark's Lucky 7, I'm sitting here thinking, it's like, only this bunch of Ferengi could pull something off that's this bullcrap and get away with it.
Yep.
Like,
Pretty
honestly,
much.
like, without giving too many spoilers away for those that may want to play it, like the last little bit with Quark, only he could crap talk who he did and get away with it.
I'm just glad I made Ron the new Nagus. Only he could pull something like this off.
Yeah, to me, that actually felt like it was, like, it actually felt like the Magnificent Ferengi Part 2, is what that felt like to me. So yeah, definitely they definitely took a quality boost in their writing. Which isn't to say that their writing was terrible before it. They definitely had some good stories, but it just seems like now, like especially with Victory's Life, that they've gotten even more great story writers and more great story content.
But it's not that as good as the voice actors themselves. Many of them recorded their lines in their own closets and had never played the game, didn't know the storyboard, and were just told, say this, so they did. And yet it all kind of came together.
Exactly. I think it wasn't it Aaron Eisenberg, they said?
Yep.
Just stuck him in a closet and said, here, say this.
Yep, when he interviewed with us at Vegas, that's what he said. And some of his lines were recorded in the closet.
Yeah. So, I think definitely it's been an interesting year for Stowe. Definitely some good stuff. We finally have Jim Hadar now, which, honestly, and then I guess I'll finish my point off with this, is honestly those guys, they move like something straight out of a dang Tom Clancy game. It's how those Vanguard Jim Hadar move. And just the final bit, like for me, that was kind of funny, but kind of like, oh my god at the same time. It's just the oh crap look that your Jim Hadar gets on his face when he encounters the Hurt for the first time. When you just know that it's going to hit the fan. When even a Jim Hadar has that look on his face. Yeah. I think we're all kind of in agreement that I think Victory's Life is probably our favorite thing that happened this past year. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, like I say, definitely an interesting year for Stowe. Definitely looking forward to seeing what they come up with this next year and everything. And yeah, I guess we'll see what kind of funny stuff we'll get into for you guys. Maybe we'll set the servers on fire. Maybe we won't. Hopefully we don't. But anyways, it is getting kind of late. We've ran a bit longer than we normally do and everything. But like I say, we kind of wanted to have a little banter, discuss, what we wanted to see in this next year coming, and, what some of our favorite stuff from this past year is. But anyways, folks, like I say, we hope you guys have had a very safe and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. And we hope you guys have a very great New Year. This is our final episode of this year of 2018. Hard to believe that 2018's already gone. We're going to be into 2019 now. Good Lord. I swear it's like...
And unfortunately, the world's ending about 2023, so enjoy it now.
That sounds like
Lord.
fun.
He's
I'll
been
get
into the
tickets.
conspiracies again. But, anyways, folks.
Y'all got any aluminum foil? I ran out, man.
Oh, good Lord. And there he goes again. Wouldn't be
Hey,
Creo
it's
otherwise.
the one episode where we can be silly, right?
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, I thought that was every episode. Did I not
Yeah,
read the
but
contract
okay,
right?
okay, off-topically silly. How about that?
There you go.
Okay, that
The
makes
rest
sense.
of the year, I'm like, hey man, y'all got any more of them dual heavy cannons, man? I could use some phasers.
Yep, that's definitely a Creo moment. But, anyways, folks, thank you for joining us this year. We hope to see you guys again next year, and we'll have some more content. We've got some more fun stuff coming for you guys this next year. Like I said, we've been working on getting prepared with Boss Man. He's been working behind the scenes on a lot of stuff, whatnot. Not going to spoil anything just yet, because we want to make sure all of our ducks are in a row and crossed our eyes, crossed our T's, dotted our I's, that kind of stuff. But
I always cross my I's and dot my T's. Am I doing it wrong?
oh, jeez. But, anyways, folks, like I say, thanks for joining us. It's been a great year. We hope to see you guys over on the other side in 2019. For now, folks, this is the Pilot Review Show, reminding you to have your tribbles spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.
This is DPS.
See ya.